Good morning. I was wondering whether you were like me and had any particular animals or birds or beings that you are particularly aligned with. And initially I was going to speak to you just about wild geese, and I realised as soon as I made the opening comment that there are more than just the wild geese that I am drawn by. And one of the beings that I have been drawn to, and it seems for decades, this has been calling out my name, and I haven't always been listening, is a tree called the Alder, and that's A-L-D-E-R. And when we were meditating recently at the retreat, it came through to me how many times the alder tree has called out my name, and I wasn't paying it any attention. I am paying attention now, and it's guiding my travels. I often find myself visiting places, being pulled to stay at places, and there is the alder tree. And the alder tree for me is a link between the earth and the water, and in the best settings, the alder tree is next to a river or a stream. And as I said in my previous, when I went for a walk, the river was running quite brown and quite forceful, and there were a number of alder trees where I had recently parked up. One of the things that I really love about the alder is when you look at it, its leaves are full of energy and they're bouncing in the breeze. And even when it's a gentle flow of air, the leaves are waving at you and welcoming. I always feel welcome when I see the alder tree. I'm not saying the other trees are not as welcome, but the birch can give you the same sense of joy and freedom that the alder gives you. But the alder tree, its leaves of the common alder, they look like hearts. There's a notch out of the top of them. And the alder tree is monoecious. It has male catkins and female cones. And when it is pollinated, the cones may drop into the water and they float along, and the beauty is they're able to germinate on the water's surface, so when they next touch land they're able to become a new tree. And I think it's such a beautiful way of sharing their energy and regrowing throughout the land. And now let's talk about what I was originally going to be talking about, which is the wild geese. I have always felt a pull on my heartstrings whenever I see geese flying overhead. And in the autumn, as they used to leave the town where I lived, and there would be the sharp V and the honking as they were turning to fly down the river bed, I would feel lonely, like I was being left behind by the geese. And there was a sense of sadness as they went off and left me behind in the town. And I realised that their numbers had dropped and they were on their way to wherever it was that particular group were heading for. And I would look up what was the spiritual meaning of geese, what did it mean to me, and there were many things. It was about community, interconnectedness, but also about following your voice, or following the voice regardless of what everybody else was doing. And there was this poem which is Something Told the Wild Geese, because we do not hear the call of the wild, but they hear. And Something Told the Wild Geese is by someone called Rachel Field. Something told the wild geese it was time to go. Though the fields lay golden, something whispered snow. Leaves were green and stirring, berries lustre-glossed, but beneath warm feathers something cautioned frost. All the sagging orchards steamed with amber spice, but each wild breast stiffened at remembered ice. Something told the wild geese it was time to fly. Summer sun was on their wings, winter in their cry. What do you feel when you see the geese in the sky calling? I see a magnificence of the way that they coordinate their moves of lifting off and landing, and I've often watched them practicing ready for setting off, and you'll see them in small groups, and then the numbers get larger and larger, and it's like an army preparing to leave, and I feel the anxiety build within me going, wait for me, wait for me. Then I picked up this book called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. And she talks about Sky Woman, and when Sky Woman dropped towards the planet that we call Earth, she was caught and held aloft by the wild geese. And the wild geese were important to the start of Sky Woman's place on this Earth. And then the next being that Sky Woman was supported by was a turtle. Now you're wondering, why is she telling us this? Well, as I've mentioned, I've had strong sensations with the wild geese, and whenever I see them, feeling tied to them. And I had been in another meditation, and a sea turtle had come along in my meditation, and it helped me stay afloat in the meditation. And it was beautiful. I could see its golden eyes, and it was, the markings on its shell were beautifully delineated. And I've often seen turtles in the water, or even sky turtles in my meditations. And Sky Woman was able to build her first piece of land by working in symbiosis with the animals and the sea creatures who helped her gather dirt that they placed onto the back of a turtle and created a safe place. And they created Turtle Island, which she talks about in Braiding Sweetgrass as being the first home, the place where Sky Woman created the earth that we all live on. And watching animals and thinking about our own connections with them, where do we come up with this idea that we are higher in the food chain? I've always wondered this. Where is this arrogance coming from? And why do we think we know better? Robin tells a tale around how we human beings are the younger ones. The trees are much older, and the plants, they have their roots in the soil, and they have their leaves in the air. They're interconnected with the elements, and therefore we have much to learn from them. And at this time of year, we see a lot around harvest and gaining our nutrients from the plants and being able to forage ready for the winter time. But we'll see that many people are not connected to the earth, they're not connected to the plant, and they're not alive, they're not appreciating the world that they live in because they're doing things that don't allow them to open their eyes. Maybe they're stressed and working really hard, but they're not looking outside the window and breathing the coolness. Do they know what the temperature is without looking at the thermometer? Sometimes living without all the gadgets can help you get back in touch with the planet and even humanity, of knowing in your heart what is going on and not having to look at your phone or any other platforms. I do wonder if I would be able to lead a life without my phone and subsist only with the wildness and living in the countryside and be completely off-grid and not having to tap into the internet. It is possible, but I'm not sure how I would keep in touch with people if I wasn't using my phone all the time. But then I could go back to what we used to do. It's not like I've never done this before, and write letters. Although I have noticed that letters can take quite a long time to get anywhere. They're not the fastest things these days. And we've become a nation of people where we want everything right now. We want things immediately, which is why we're not supporting local shops. We want to go and have that thing exactly how we want it right now, which means that we've ended up with shops not carrying the stock that they used to because people aren't walking in and buying it anymore. We've created a situation, we human beings, where businesses aren't thriving. We're losing our connection with the community. But maybe stop a moment and look at the community of animals, the community of trees. How do all the trees know to have their nuts at the same time? You know, the interconnectedness of their roots, of a mycelium system. If they can talk and they're telling us that the way to survive is to communicate and support each other and work together, not against each other, because the key word is support. Why can't we do that? We used to do it. There are certain things where you might read which would suggest that it's not in the best interests of the shareholders for us to support each other. Could you imagine if we started sharing food, for example? I was driving along yesterday and I thought to myself, I would quite like to be in a community where people would share their excesses on that day. So if you could only buy 6 apples, maybe be able to go to the village hall and say, I only need 1 or 2, here the remainder while they're fresh, rather than putting waste food into the waste food bin. When I was a child, I don't recall there being any food waste. There certainly weren't bins full of shopping and food that had been thrown out. But then you could also go to your local shop and buy the amount of food that you needed, not actually have to buy enough for a family of 5 when you don't have a family of 5. It's actually quite difficult as a single person buying food because I don't need that much food. And to be honest, I don't actually want to eat all the same thing for the next 5 days to make sure that I eat it all up. Whether I live in a van or I live in a house, shopping is a problem as a single person unless I can get to a farm shop that sells things in by the weight. And not all of them do that anymore. Some of them, it's all pre-wrapped and it's designed for you to be able to take away and use over several weeks. And if you're a single person, it'll be several months, and then it might not be quite as good for you as it was originally. So maybe we can work back, thinking about all the farm shops that are popping up, and there are communities that are working together. Can we learn from the trees? Do you want to listen to the guidance of the plants? Do you want to turn away from your phones? Do you want to turn away from a world that's leading you towards fear all the time and not considering that it's not beneficial to you to watch TV every day? And I know some people like that. It's part of their ritual to be able to watch television. Are you able to exist without the electrical items that you use? How long can you go for without picking it up and touching your phone? Those are challenges, aren't they? Whether you're ready to do them or not. I wonder how long I would go without picking up my phone, as it's one of my main means of communication when I'm on my own. But I do often spend hours where I will go walking without it. And because I choose to spend those times without that connection to the electrical side, I'm able to connect with the other elements, connect with the trees, connect with the wildlife, and connect with other human beings by talking to them, because I'm not on my phone. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any comments, please comment below. I look forward to hearing from you. Have a marvellous, magical day. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Cauldron of Curiosities. If you enjoyed this dip into folklore, don't forget to follow the podcast, share it with a friend, and keep your lantern handy for the next curious tale.